Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race, we are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 404 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited that you are here. And those of you who have been here with me a long time, or since the very beginning even, I am super grateful for you and your support. If this is your first time and you're a listener, we have plenty to go through. If my guest today is someone you are particularly interested in, I suspect many of the previous guests might be of interest to you, so be sure to go back and check that one out. I also want to thank those of you who have recently left a review on becoming a sustainable runner on Amazon. I really appreciate your updates now that you've worked your way through the book. I appreciate it and just, grateful for you for so many reasons. All right, today I am excited to bring on Isaiah Stofferahn to the show. Isaiah is someone who I've really been enjoying watching on Instagram, and he's a big YouTuber in terms of the videos that he has made, just challenging what running is to us, how to make it more fun, really pushing the boundaries in terms of what we can utilize running for in our daily lives, ways we can challenge ourselves and fun, and in sometimes silly ways, like, for example, running a mile before Starbucks makes your drink, or picking up your dinner and making it home before your DoorDash gets to your house as well. I really love that he is keeping it fun. He also has a traumatic experience from when he was younger that has really shaped the way that he lives his life. You're going to hear a little bit about that. And I really encourage you to give this a listen if you are someone who is just looking to find more joy in your running, in your life, and see what you can learn from my guest today. So let's take a moment to thank one of our sponsors, then we can get right to this episode with Isaiah. For all these years, you've seen me host events at Tracksmith. You've heard me talk about Tracksmith. You've likely noticed if you follow me on social media that I am wearing Tracksmith all day, every day. There is rarely a day that goes by where I'm not wearing something of Tracksmith. But there's something that I haven't actually talked about in detail, and that is the sports bras. While I love the sports bras, I always understood that for those people with larger chests, it wasn't exactly ideal. And now I am so excited that Tracksmith has heard our call, and I have been asking them about this too. And they have come out with the Alston adjustable bra, which is the most supportive bra yet. Has these adjustable features so you can have maximum comfort and stability. I will admit I was a little unsure of whether it would be that much more supportive, but it really is. And so I've been very happy with that. I've been excited that I can finally have a bra that feels extremely supportive in a way that I can push to other people and say, this is what I like, this is what I enjoy. And I encourage you to go check it out for yourself. There's also the latch at the top where you can choose whether you have it open or closed. There's a strong band at the back, and you can go check it out for yourself. That can go nicely with your session speed shorts, which, as you have heard me say, are my favorite item of all time. And Tracksmith items, as I've been saying, I've been wearing these since 2019, and they are still in just as good quality as they were back then. They last, they are durable, they are made with good quality materials that are antimicrobial, especially those with merino wool in them. And that means you can get multiple uses, which is also good environmentally, in addition to the longevity of the products. So friends, if you want to get $15 off your order of $75 or more, you can go to tracksmith.com/Tina, and you can use code TINANEW to get yourself $15 off your order of $75 or more. You can go to tracksmith.com/Tina. Isaiah, thank you so much for joining me today on the Running for Real podcast. I am excited that you are here. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, I have to start by, my eyes were drawn to this. We didn't talk about this before we started recording, but the snowboards in the background.
Oh, yeah.
I always am interested. Oh, the skateboard. That's embarrassing. Yes, I can see that now you've moved. They're small. They're
I know. It's like my head's like, I gotta get my head out of the way.
Yeah, I guess there's a perspective thing. People are going to be like, you idiot. There's nothing alike.
My head was covering half of it. They'll understand.
And you know what? At some point later in the conversation, I actually do want to talk about a version of the way your and my lives have been at times could not be further away from one another, but in some ways have kind of come together. So I do want to talk about that. But for those listeners who maybe haven't come across you on your Instagram or more likely your YouTube content, what do you want to tell us a little bit about who Isaiah is?
Well, it's interesting, I guess. I don't know. My life has kind of gone in this, it's like so many different versions, I think, of that my life could have gone, you sort of do a recap and you're like, Who is this person? So up to this point in my life, for whatever reason, my life has led me to kind of a lot of entertainment, in the way of right now, a lot of running, which is super fun for me. It's one of my passions is running. And so, but a few years ago when I started doing content creation in mostly in the form of entertainment, and challenges in that way, there were just so many different things, different avenues that I could have taken the channel, specifically on YouTube, which then of course leads to all the other platforms. But I think the most relevant version of Isaiah right now is the guy that runs and sometimes does incorporate silly challenges into the running space, which I think up till recently maybe would have been frowned upon amongst the running community. But running being as popular as it is right now, seems that people find it to be at least entertaining, if nothing else. So yeah, I like to challenge myself in any capacity that I can. And I find that running is such a fantastic personal challenge in a daily capacity, but also long term. And I love that aspect of running. So yeah, anyways, that all put together, just I like to challenge myself and be the best version of myself every day. So
I love that. And I have to also, you said this before, that, and as I am, from what you said, a month apart from you, you are about to hit a 10-year anniversary with your wife. My husband and I are 1 month behind you. But yeah, that in itself is also something I think to be proud of nowadays with how much work that takes. And obviously your wife, and you have one child?
Correct. Yeah, we have a 1.5-year-old. So
okay, so you're in the thick of it as well, which is interesting in itself. When I'm thinking about your content, the amount of times okay, let's just go down this rabbit hole for a second. 2 things. One, how often does your son interrupt your videos when you're like almost done with something and they like wander in or come in? Because I find that happens all the time. I like know the moment I'm like almost there and you're like trying to rush your words to get the thing out before the door opens. Does that happen to you?
So my daughter,
she's a daughter. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I may have alluded to son, but my daughter, she does sometimes. But to be honest with you, so much of my life is I've been able to separate from my personal and like my online life really well, I think. And so we're really careful about, especially if we're filming long form content. The short form content, she'll sometimes sneak in. Yes. If it's something like here, I'm shooting in the house, but the long form stuff is almost never shot in the house. And so there's a separation that's really nice that allows me to go and get the work done, but it does happen.
See, I feel like because I really don't want my kids in my content, I'm trying to walk this line of getting things done while they're around playing, but then I don't want their faces in it. So as soon as they walk into the screen, I'm like, done. That video's done now. Like, so, but also, I'm really struggling right now with, I know they see me filming myself doing things, but I don't want them to think I'm a complete narcissist who walks around all day talking to the camera.
This is a really interesting problem, or I don't know if I want to call it a problem, but you know what I mean? Like a challenge that I think parents who are making content get to walk that line eventually. Yeah. I don't know. How old are your children?
Mine are just turned 4 and 6.
Okay. Yeah. See, I get to face that at some point because I feel like my daughter being just a little bit over a year now, like she doesn't really understand what's happening or where's dad going and doing. But yeah, it's like, oh, now I get to talk about this some point with my children about like, hey, this is what dad's doing and this is why it's important. And you don't need to be doing the same thing necessarily.
And I'm really starting to face that now with especially my 6-year-old. She's figured out, she got given an iPad to use at school. So she's figured out how to use everything. And so now she just takes pictures of herself any chance she gets. And I'm like, did I do that to you? Or are you just doing that? Did you learn that at school? Like I'm just, it's something I'm thinking about. So I'm just conscious of this with content creators. But as you know, most of the people in your position are kind of like living in New York, living free, going here, there, and everywhere. It's a bit of a different life. So
100%.
Yes. Okay. So let's go a little bit backwards. While you make running content, you make other content. We'll go into some of that in a little bit. Running has always been a part of your life. So tell us a little bit about the background of what running meant to you when you were younger, the relationship you had with it.
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking about this today. I was running with Jeremy Miller, and we were talking about and another individual who we were talking about like running as a kid and what sports we played as kids and stuff. Because so many of those sports do involve running. But it's funny. I remember specifically when I was I trained for a half marathon when I was like 13 or 14ish, and I remember some parents around me saying things that stuck with me that I thought maybe hindered me wanting to run as much at that age. But they used to say like, this is going to stunt your growth if you ran too young, which I don't know where that came from, but for some reason that was like something that was being said. Anyways, my relationship with running, I think in whatever capacity it was, mostly was surrounded other sports. And probably for that reason, like don't run too much because otherwise you'll stunt your growth. And I don't know why that was important to me, but I'm a short guy anyways. But yeah, so then fast forward when I got married, hadn't done anything beyond the half marathon. And then my wife, who I married 10 years ago, her sister and her brother-in-law had just finished running like their 10th marathon. And I just thought, like, if they can run a marathon, so can I. So I naively signed up for ran my grandma's marathon in Duluth, Minnesota. And I went and ran that marathon. It must have been like close to 10 years ago. And did terrible. I thought, towards the end, I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm never going to do this again. This was the worst decision. And there's something about like mile 24, 25, you're just like regretting everything. Yeah, I swore it off completely. I was like, I'm never going to do this again. But as soon as I finished the cross the finish line, I think it was like maybe, 10 minutes later, I'm sure I turned to my wife and was like, I got to do that again. It's like, for whatever reason, like crossing the finish line is like ignites that desire to do it again. And that's kind of fluctuated over the last 10 years and more have increased my running so much more in the last 3 to 5 years. And part of that is because I got kind of into ultra running. I sort of became disenfranchised with running after not being able to get the BQ so many times in a row. And most of that came down to just lack of training and lack of discipline. But my little brother. So
you were one of those who was like, train for it, race, miss it, train for it, race, miss it. You were one of those. Okay.
Yep. Constantly missing it. I think I ran like 7 marathons and didn't get the BQ. And I was just like, I kept like etching away a few minutes, but never getting quite there. And it was really frustrating. And my little brother said, let's sign up for an ultra marathon. And they weren't really as popular as they are now, but I was like, well, maybe. And then we did. And I trained really hard for that. I ended up placing 3rd. And I was like, wow, that maybe I could be better if I'm an ultra runner. So I got really into the ultra running world and did more of those. And then sort of 2 years ago, one of my best friends, his name is Brandon. He sort of was like, hey, you should train to try to get under 3 hours again. And I put in a real effort last fall, got down to 2:57 at CIM last fall. And actually it was at that race that I was like, I think I might start to film some running content because I was already doing YouTube and everything else. And that's kind of when I started posting running specific content to my Instagram.
So this was 2023 or 22?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, wow.
2023.
Okay,
so
recent.
About December of last year is when I started posting running content on my Instagram. So yeah.
Wow, that's so exciting. I was there with that race. So I wonder if I was would have seen you. I was with Kafuzi that day.
Okay.
So
very cool.
I don't know if you know him, but like if he would have, I'm wondering now if he would have been like, oh, there's Isaiah. And I would be like, great. I don't know who that is, but
probably not. But yeah, I ran 2:57. I'm sure you ran much faster.
I wasn't running.
Oh, you weren't? Okay.
No, I was working. I work with the sustainability initiatives for a lot of the races, and so I was working with CIM. But I was with Kafuzi running back. We were, driving from here, there, and Brian Metzler and Tony DuPasquale, 3 people. We were just zigzagging around to try and grab people. So you would have run by when we were at one of those spots. But yeah, that's interesting now I think about that. And wow, that is very recent. And so were you doing these challenges that you've been doing before you started posting that stuff?
So YouTube.
On YouTube.
That's like a whole journey in of itself. But my YouTube, content has revolved a lot around physical challenges. Yeah. And they range from running to, trying to climb Everest on a Stairmaster to tons of other different types of things. But yeah, running is one that has sort of, I don't know, it's become an obsession. And so we've done a lot of running videos, but it's more broadly speaking on YouTube. It's like, we'll attack any challenge if we think it's a good idea for the YouTube channel.
And so with these challenges that you've been doing for quite a while, you have a huge following on Instagram. Was it 10.5 million or something?
On YouTube, yes. Yeah.
Did I say YouTube? Did I say
Instagram?
Oh, YouTube. Sorry. That's what I meant to say. Have you was that something you did as a kid? Like where do you think that came from in you?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely was, I was definitely the kid that was always getting hurt, kind of, like my parents are like constantly having to take me to the hospital.
In the ER again, yeah.
Exactly. Yes. I can recall many times that I was like taken to the hospital to deal with something, getting stitches frequently, more so than my brothers, but we were all, I have an older brother and a younger brother. And, we were just, the typical 90s boy, just trying to do anything we could to have fun. So a lot of goofy stuff as we were kids. And that obviously has portrayed itself throughout my adult life as well.
And with the recording of that, was that it started off, I mean, I don't know where social media was in that time, but was it something that you just kind of were recording bits of to show people that you were doing or for your own journey? Like how did that begin? Yeah,
that's a good question. So I'm 30. I'll be 31 this year. So I'm a little bit older than the average YouTuber. And that career didn't exist, when we were kids. And so I sort of started to see these people become more popular on YouTube. And I started to see them driving Lamborghinis and Ferraris and whatnot and living in big houses. And I was probably around 25, already married. And I'm a high school dropout and a college dropout. And so my wife, she was a physical therapist or worked in physical therapy. And so I kind of turned to my wife and I was like, what if I was a YouTuber, like I could try to do that.
It was a conscious choice.
Yeah. And I was like, I think, if I could figure this out, then I can make a living making videos, which I always enjoyed doing. My brothers and I did make silly videos when we were kids. Okay. They never made it to the internet. They were just for fun. And yeah, one thing led to another. I tried hard enough, worked long enough on the content to a point where we were able to, make a living off of it. Now my wife doesn't work anymore. So I was like, I sort of tease her. I'm like, you worked so that I could, figure this out. And then when it finally worked, then it was like, okay, now you get to take your break. So yes. But I was, it wouldn't have been possible. I mean, I got married at a young age. I got married at 20 and it truly would not have been possible if I wasn't married because she was the breadwinner. She was making all of the income. I wasn't making anything. When I told her that I was like, I want to try to do this. And she believed in me when I told her, I was like, it's going to work. I swear, just give me 2 to 5 years. And she just said, go for it. So if I didn't have that, then, at 25, it's like live in mom's basement or, I don't know, you still have to work. So it's not impossible, but I don't think I would have had the drive to do it if I hadn't had my wife there to say like, keep going, keep going.
Every morning I wake up, I head downstairs and I go directly to the kitchen. I fill my bottle up with cold water out of the fridge, and I put a scoop of AG1 in there. For me, starting my day this way is the best way to begin the day. And I understand that ideally we want to be making sure that all our food provides all the things we need in our diet. But I know my diet, the things that I'm eating, are not hitting all my nutritional bases. And that is where AG1 always starts my day, because I know then I am filling in any nutritional gaps. I'm starting my day off the right way, and I'm supporting my whole body health. AG1 is a foundational nutritional supplement that delivers daily nutrients and gut health support and is backed by multiple research studies, so you can trust what you're putting into your body, and I do trust them. I trust AG1 because unlike so many products, the entire formula is backed by research studies. Not just the ingredients, AG1 is packed with a variety of nutrient-dense ingredients and is the perfect complement to my diet. I drink it because I know it works, and it gives me peace of mind by covering those bases. I care what I put into my body, and that is why this is something that I trust and want to continue to use. I know my body, and if my gut isn't functioning optimally, it'll be tougher for my body to absorb the nutrients from the diet that I'm having. With AG1, I prioritize that gut support. And actually, in a recent research study, AG1 doubled the amount of healthy bacteria in the gut, including 2 species known for supporting gut and whole body health. I love that they continue to innovate, they continue to research and do these studies on the work that they are doing to make sure they can stand by what they're saying. If there's one product I trust to support my whole body health, it's AG1. And that's why I've partnered with them for the last 6 years. It's easy and satisfying to start your journey with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/Tina. That's drinkag1.com/Tina. That offer is for those of us in the US. If you're in the UK, if you're in Canada, that offer works for you. Check it out. What about the, so I haven't mentioned this in quite a while. When I was in college, I told you before we started recording, I was one of the original running bloggers. When I was in college, I remember my dad saying to me, you go ahead and do that silly blog stuff, but it's never going to make you any money. Mm. And I specifically remember then, 3 years later, being like, I'm sorry, what was that you were saying, Dad?
Yeah.
Because it really bothered me at the time, and I could feel not only his, but many people in my life were like, what are you doing? Wasting your life away. This because it's hard to conceptualize that, especially when, as you said, you had an intention. For me, it was kind of I was dreaming of that, but I wouldn't say it out loud. I was kind of hedging my bets, essentially. Did you have a lot of resistance and people saying no, you need to get a real job, a 9 to 5?
No, I mean, I could feel it from my parents a little bit.
Yeah.
I think I heard my mom and dad multiple times, just so what are you doing? And you could feel the strong undertones of do something with your life. And I remember telling my mom, she asked me, I was probably 2 years into trying to make content. She was like, so what are you trying to do with YouTube? And it sort of was that kind of disappointing, what are you going to do with your life kind of question. Mm. And I remember telling her, I was like, all I want to do, Mom, is make videos and have fun with my friends. And it was the most immature thing I could have said, but it was the truth. I was like, this is what I want to do. And I think she said well, if someone can do it, Isaiah, you could do it. But it was that sort of sarcastic. And I think we all sort of create these I don't want to call them enemies, but negative thoughts in our head that help drive, and so it's not that anybody came up to me and was like, it's not going to work, Isaiah. But I definitely felt some of that from individuals that were you could almost feel them doubting you and using that as fuel of all right, I'm going to prove that this works. I'm going to make sure that I don't fail for that reason and that reason alone, which is silly, but hey, if it works, it works.
Yeah,
it's a placebo effect. It's
no, for
it
sure.
doesn't matter if it works or if it's placebo or if it's real, but if it works, then we're good.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a good example of, I will say kind of the population coming into the workforce, the population that's already in there, are starting, and I think the pandemic definitely did this, of recognizing that, a job doesn't have to be a struggle every day. Deal with your work so you can get to the evening where you can have a few drinks and forget the day and then start all over again. But it can be a place where you can find joy in it every day. And as you said, have fun with your friends. And, I have this conversation often about how, yes, there are definitely elements that are tough with this area of work, particularly the switching off part of it, of like you kind of always, your brain is always running. But at the same time, there's so many benefits to doing things where you really just get to, just make fun or make enjoyment be the center of what you're doing, the relationships that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When did you start making content? You went from the blogging, but like, when did you decide that like, I'm going to make like the podcast and content specifically to to sort of expand beyond just blogging?
Yeah, it's very interesting because I was thinking about this when you were saying this earlier. So I used to work for a company that makes running resources online. And my boss said to me, you can either revive our podcast, which has like died at the time. And this was a time when podcasts weren't really that popular. He said, you can either revive our podcast, take that over, or you can make videos. And the idea of videos terrified me. So I was like, I'm going to pick the podcast. And so that was back in 2015. And then I started my own in 2017. And so I was in that tract, but hearing what you were saying earlier before we started recording made me think, I probably should have picked YouTube. I think I'm more suited, my personality, to YouTube.
That's never too late. Start right now. No, I'm serious. People ask me all the time, they're like, is it too late? Well, it's like, no, it's not too late. It's never too late. And YouTube is like, it's now, this year has to be the best time ever to be a YouTuber. Like, and it keeps getting every year over and over. So it's like, start now. Don't wait another year and then go, oh, I wish I had started last year. And that's how I felt about the running content. Cause I was like, I was seeing people like Matt Choi and Jeremy, and they were doing so well. And I was like, man, I kind of got sick of the content I was posting to Instagram specifically, because it felt just rehashing stuff we'd done on YouTube. And I was just like, this isn't inspiring. I don't feel like I get to share a new part of me with the world. And I was running a lot, 60, 70 miles a week. And I was like, I should just make videos about this. And it was really intimidating because I had watched Matt Choi go from, 60,000 followers to the 350,000 he's at now, based off of, running alone. And I remember thinking like, how's he going to do this? Like, you have to do something bigger than just running. But he didn't, and he kept growing. And I was like, man, I should probably just pursue that now, because I wait another 6 months, then I'm going to be like, oh, how do I start this? And it's going to be the same thing, So it's like after the CIM race, I think I was in Yosemite with my friend Brandon, and I was like, let's just record some stuff right now and I'm going to post it. And then started posting, and I was like, I'm just going to keep posting, and we'll figure out formats. I'll figure out, which ones work, which ones don't. I'll redo the ones that work, and I'll get rid of the ones that don't, and we'll just keep trying new stuff. And I think that's really the evolution of content on any platform, at least from my experience, is like, you just got to keep trying and keep going.
Have you seen any of the negative sides of this being kind of the focus of your work and career?
Oh yeah. I mean, both from runners that are like, what are you doing? This is stupid. Because I was telling people this morning while I was running, I was like, I see myself mostly as an entertainer. Especially within running, because it's like all the videos are supposed to be funny. The challenges are ridiculous. I just ran a marathon in Crocs in San Diego. That. Like the average runner is like, what are you doing? Like,
and you ran like 3:09 in them. That's crazy.
So most people are probably like, the runners that are serious are like, this guy's an idiot. But then there's the other side of people who are like, oh, we just want to see you post videos about something else. And so you're not going to please everybody. That's just true of anything in life. You're never going to please everybody. But I think if I can make something that people find enjoyable to watch, but also hopefully helps inspire them a bit, then I've done exactly what I want to do. So,
yeah, it's as you said, it is you have to get your mind used to the fact that people are going to comment. You can't win. As you said, you're going to have the majority of people probably won't say anything. You have a good chunk that will be like, I love you, no matter what you do. You'll have the people that will not like you, whatever you do. And you kind of have to be okay with that. And I really, I mean, we said we were going to get into it, so now's probably a good time. Yeah, I find it so interesting. As I said, I to you before, I came from the elite world where everything was very much, you were told, not directly, but it was very clear, particularly for me as an elite athlete with other elite athletes, that I wasn't to reveal my weaknesses. I wasn't to say that I'd had a tough training block. And so people at the time really appreciated the fact that I was essentially a bridge between the elite athletes and the recreational runners oh, you're a little bit like me, actually. I struggle with that same fear. Or, the interesting part is for elite athletes, we think about dropping out often. That's kind of the thing that goes around in your mind. And the average runner is like, why would I drop out? Like, for the most part. But beyond that, so I was saying to you at the beginning, we were very far away. I was very much at a point of like serious, I would do things out on runs and my husband would be like, Tina, you are going to get hit by a car. And I'd say, I'm doing my training. And he'd say, they don't care that you're running a 5-minute mile. They will smoke you down regardless. So I was so extreme. And yes, people like you would have really annoyed me. But I've done a lot of growing since then. And also seen, as you said, the inspiration it can provide. And having run, so Matt and I did Peachtree together last July. And we ate donuts, we drank beer. I had never drunk beer in a race before. I don't think I'd eaten donuts either, actually. But like seeing the amount of people that came up to him and saying how much they were inspired by him, it really was like a click in my head of like, oh, there's so many people that never felt welcome whatsoever in this space, because they don't want running to be about like dig deep and head down and give it your all. They want to find a way to make it an escape and something that brings them life, not sucks the life out of them. So I feel like our lives have kind of verged together a little bit more than they would have done in the past. But so have you noticed that with your own life of just, we're told by, or maybe we were told about 10 years ago, that inspiration comes from no pain, no gain. You got to find like your role model of someone who's like doing something really, really hard and gritting their teeth, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, I think even for me, like even posting running content specifically, and being vulnerable is hard too, just on the internet. I think I always sort of thought like, I'm not David Goggins. There's no way that I can be. I mean, he's a Navy SEAL. Like I'm not going to be David Goggins. And if I can't reach that level of like intensity, then I probably just shouldn't put it out there. Cause like, it's not inspiring enough, because they could just go to David Goggins and watch him. But there's a more relatable version of David Goggins, maybe, that people would enjoy watching as well. And so it's easy to like sort of trap yourself in some of those things and then be like, oh, there's no reason to post this or to think about this. But I think what you said is so true about, especially right now with running being as popular as it is. There's this like, I never thought I'd have a career in running because I'm not fast enough. And people will say that. They're just like, oh, you're never going to be as fast as this person. And that's true of anybody. Like there's always going to be a guy that's faster than you or a gal that's faster than you. And so I never really thought I would be a professional runner, which is probably why I never posted anything running specific, even though I love to run. And then I realized with content creation that like, oh, I could post running stuff and I could go to more events. I could go to more marathons and push myself and still make money off of it and still provide inspiration to those people that maybe are just starting running and want to try this out. And so, yeah, seeing people like Matt, and there's a lot more content creators now from all over the world that are creating content similar to Matt as well, that I think are so inspiring. And they're not running, 250 marathons even. They're not even running like 240 marathons necessarily. They're running a lot of the marathons, even Matt runs, and I think are very inspiring, are like 3:30s, which is like a much more approachable time to run a marathon and maybe more achievable than for people too that are watching. So yeah, I think it made me realize that like, oh, there's not this threshold that I have to meet. I don't have to run a 2:20 marathon before I start making this content or something like that. And I think seeing the elite athletes too, and I think there still is some gripe. I've heard some rumblings between the elite athletes that are, they're training for the Olympics. And then there's people like me, and the elite athletes maybe are like, oh, these silly content creators, like they don't know what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, hey, we're just trying to have some fun, and we're making content about running, and it doesn't hurt anybody. If anything, it's inspiring more people to run, which I think is a huge positive. So
absolutely. And as someone who crashed out of the elite world because I was burned out and hated it, it's also a much more sustainable way of going about it when you're making joy at the center, not like your worth being all wrapped up in performances. With that, do you ever struggle or fear that you will struggle with not being like maybe self-obsessed, but where you would get wrapped up in your content or what you're providing people, or the comments that people are bringing around you? Like, do you fear that will get to your head at any point?
I don't think so. I mean, I've been making content for like 6 years or so, and more like as a career now for 3 years. I've been growing like my YouTube channel, and I think I've seen all the comments. I've seen a healthy amount of bad comments, mean comments,
do you read them?
And I don't really read the comment section. I used to spend a long time. But I think it's also kind of a narcissistic tendency, I think, to read the comments, to care what people think. And it's not that you shouldn't care. I think there's a fine line of like, okay, I want to make sure that I'm not hurting somebody.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, like, let's fix it. But for the most part, I think if I'm having a good time and people are watching and they're finding it positive, then I don't care what the haters say. Like, it doesn't matter to me. So if anything, it's kind of funny. Like if I read like a mean comment, honestly, at this point in my career, it kind of cracks me up. I'm like, wow, you took time out of your day to comment that. It's pretty funny.
Yes, but that takes a lot of maturity and growth to get to that point of, like you said, having a healthy relationship with that. And that can be difficult. I've gone through definite waves of feeling that way of, I actually think for me, it was some of the things that did really well that got me to that point. Seeing the level of personal attack people would give on me made me finally be like, actually, you don't have a right to say who I look like or what anything about me or who I am as a human being. Mm-hmm. When you have no context to this, you're watching this out of nowhere. You haven't read the caption, you haven't read anything, so your opinion really doesn't matter. But I think there seems to be kind of a dangerous ground of where maybe as someone's growing or as things are kind of coming together, it can be tempting to get wrapped up in that stuff. But in terms of reading everything and taking that to heart, but also the other way of like, wow, look how amazing I am. And that can be a tricky thing to work through. But I'm glad that hasn't been the case for you. And you have, found a way to help it maybe progress where you're going in the future, but also not take away from you.
I'd love to hear your thoughts too, but I think a lot of it has to do, at least for me, is community, having people around me that I think help keep me grounded. That obviously starts like in the house. So having my wife, help keep me grounded. And beyond that, having my friends. I work with a couple of my best friends. They work for me. And so we get to talk about the content we're making and, what we like about it, what we don't like. If we're reading the comments, like, hey, what comments here are useful in the direction that we want to go, and like even taking some of them to heart, or is this just all bogus and we don't need to read this stuff? So I think having people around to help keep you grounded, that community, that's making sure that you're not going crazy, I think is important.
It is the time of year, at least for me in St. Louis here, where I step outside and it is immediately, I'm pummeled with a soupy, thick, dense air of the humidity of the summer. And that means I am sweating a lot more, not only on my runs when I'm doing them, or in this case right now, my bikes, but also just in daily life. I have noticed that I am sweating more, that I feel dehydrated more, and I need to stay better on top of my hydration. And with that, when you are sweating, you are also losing electrolytes, so those need to be replaced. I begin every day with a electrolyte tab from Precision. I like the pH 100. I put one of those in a glass of water, goes along with my AG1, and I start my day with that because I know then I am starting my body off with the right balance. It is ready to go, whatever I've got in my day, whatever exercise I'm doing. And now that I'm starting to do workouts, I'm really loving that I can add that in there. In addition to that, as I begin my long workouts, I can begin to start to practice with the fuel that I will be using in my runs in the year to come. And if you are racing a full marathon, I strongly encourage you to start testing out those gels, that fuel right now. I love that Precision Fuel and Hydration has the PF 300 Flow Gel. So you can actually get yourself a big container of gel and you can disperse it as you feel you need. You can put as much in there or as little. If you're practicing like me, getting your stomach used to taking more fuel, which research has definitely found we need more than we thought we used to, you can get that 300 gel and choose how much you like. But any of their gels, even for those people who don't typically like the taste of gels, these go down so easily. They have a very mild flavor that reduces flavor fatigue. They are just fantastic. As a friend of mine, you can get 15% off your order by using code TINASENTME at precisionhydration.com. You can get those electrolyte tabs there. You can get your gels. I definitely encourage you to get the original flavor. They taste good. There's also chews there if you like them. Start now. And if you're not sure where to start, check out their free fuel and hydration planner, which you can get a link to in the show notes. Remember to use code TINASENTME for that 15% off. I'm very great. Sometimes it's a little bit annoying that I have such a terrible Instagram husband because he has no social media and I have to literally every time say, can you take a video of this, please? Because he will never, ever, ever, ever remember to take anything himself. But I also am very, very grateful that he doesn't have social media and he is a private person because it does provide that boundary. And as I said to you earlier, my kids are not, their faces are not in my content. I try and keep them out of my content in general.
Love that.
To the point to where sometimes people are like, oh, you have kids? And I'm like, yeah. But that said, it gives me a line because I do struggle with the boundary. There's two boundaries I struggle with. One is the boundary of switching off of like, what should I and shouldn't I be taking content of while I am doing things? But also the boundary of, what was I going to say? I guess like what people should, that was it. Of reminding myself, it is just running. Like if you don't respond to this email or you don't listen to this thing someone has sent you, no one's going to die. No one's going to like be in trouble. It is just running. You're not that not that you're not that important, but it's not a life or death situation. Because that's one thing I do get wrapped up in sometimes is, especially around my kids, like I don't want to be where I'm like chasing them around the house and thinking about what I'm going to be doing the next day. And that, so yeah.
It's like a healthy separation of like, work and family. Yeah.
So to switch directions, I do want to talk about, you posted a video recently about how you had a traumatic brain injury in a snowboarding accident a decade ago, maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah, it was 14 years ago.
14 years ago. And you were given a 50% chance of survival at that point, from what I read. Tell us about so this was when you were doing content even at that point when this happened.
No content at that point. That was like, this is like pre YouTube.
Okay.
I don't think even YouTube was like popular at the time, because that's how old I am.
And so, coming back from that, obviously, I mean, why don't you share a little bit about what happened to us?
Yeah. So I was 16, and snowboarding was a big part of my winters, just like trying to snowboard as much as possible, me and my friends. Mm-hmm. And most of that was because of, watching the Olympics and watching athletes like Shaun White, and watching BMX and watching guys like Tony Hawk, which these skateboards are signed by Tony Hawk behind me. I was fortunate enough to shoot a video with him like a year and a half ago, which was really cool. But yeah, so we were doing a lot of those things. And one winter when I was 16, me and my brothers and my best friends decided to go snowboarding, and at a hill that we'd never been to. And it was one of those winters up. I lived in Wisconsin, and that's where we spent most of my childhood, up in like the Midwest. And it was one of those winters that was just like stupid cold, and it was negative degrees out, and just like freezing cold, but didn't matter. We were just like stoked to be snowboarding, and we decided it was like the second hill I think we went down, and we decided to race down this hill, and I caught an edge on my snowboard and it essentially shot into the woods, and my snowboard caught a tree, sort of wrapped me around the tree, and then I sort of came around and hit the tree with my head. And I don't have any memory of this, but I was traveling fast enough to fracture my skull, and so I was sort of on the mountain, going in and out of consciousness, and basically dying. And the ski patrol came and got me, and they took me to a local hospital to find that I had fractured my skull and there was brain bleeding going on. And what happens is, your brain starts to swell because I've injured my brain now, and there's bleeding. And so because my brain was swelling, your skull just kind of suffocates your brain in that moment. And so they needed to actually break my head open more in order to alleviate some of that pressure. And they were not capable of doing it at that hospital. So they life flighted me to a different hospital about an hour away. And at that hospital in Marshfield, Wisconsin, they pulled me off the helicopter and did scans. And they basically, my mom tells me there's this doctor in like a Hawaiian shirt, really long hair. It didn't look like he belonged there. And he kind of came up to my mom after they did the scans and was like, "Hey, your son's going to be fine." And just kind of playing it off. And my mom, of course, is like weeping, and essentially told my mom, like, "Hey, the bleeding has gone down. We're not going to do surgery. We're going to keep an eye on it. And we're going to monitor him." I was in a coma at this moment. And so I spent 3 days in a coma before I came to. And then brain injuries are interesting because you kind of go through these phases of coming out of it. And you sort of get angry is a part of one of the phases, which is really interesting. But I became very angry in the hospital and wanted to go home, and was like really pressuring everybody to let me go home. And I don't remember any of this. And so I was like apparently cursing at at the hospital staff, which is not like me at all. And so it was really fascinating to hear about. But I was supposed to be in the NICU unit for up to a couple of months. And they ended up letting me go home 7 days later, which is pretty crazy in and of itself. But I had to relearn how to walk. Had to relearn a lot of like basic human functions because of that's just what happens to a brain injury. You just don't know what's going to change. And I remember my mom always told me like the doctors told my parents, we don't know what Isaiah's going to be like when he comes to. Don't expect anything because he may have maybe lost function to certain things. He maybe doesn't remember you. He maybe doesn't remember family members, those kind of things. We just don't know. And so I was fortunate enough to not have any of those things happen to me, but it really wrecked my high school, for that time in my high school, I was 16. And so it's like, can't do sports. I couldn't even watch movies for like 6 months because of the stimulation was too much. And just a lot of, just kind of threw my world upside down. And I was a pretty active teenager. And now I'm just bedridden, kind of like had to crawl around different places. Like it just was really, shocking, I guess, to somebody at that age. But honestly, it's better that it happened at a younger age than at an older age, because we bounce back so much quicker, when we're younger. And so, fortunately enough for me, I was able to, a couple of years later, get back into all the things that I wanted to do, and life sort of presumed as normal, which is pretty crazy.
So presumed as normal. Go on. Oh, what were you going to say?
Oh, the only part of the injury that still affects me today is the loss of hearing in my left ear. I just had it checked last year to see if there was anything that had changed, but essentially I fractured my temporal bone, which is the main communication between the ear and the brain, and it created a constant ringing in my ear. So I basically have this ringing that is like constant, and it has been since I was 16, but I don't even really notice it anymore.
Sure.
So
brain adapts. Yeah. Okay. So then you said you were pretty much able to live life as normal. So you didn't have either a hesitation to do anything that could risk your life again, or life's short, I'm going to make the most of this. It was kind of following the track you were on before.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember thinking at that age when I was, coming out of it, like, oh, this is going to affect me for the rest of my life, or at least that's what people told me. But the way that I thought of it was like, this is a bummer. I'm not going to be able to do the things I want to do. And I think that really only was that way for about a year or two, until I kind of was like, wait, why would it stop me? Like there are these things I want to do. I want to go skydiving. I want to, cliff jump. I want to do all these crazy things that I want to do. And if I don't have somebody there holding my hand telling me like, don't do this, then I'm just going to do it, So I don't know if it necessarily became a catalyst to do the thing that I want to do, but it definitely didn't hold me back, whether it be for good or bad. Like, I'm not going to get into a boxing match. I'm not going to pursue the UFC, because I know there are some very real risks to traumatic brain injury that could cause it to be way worse. So I'm not going to do those things, but there's certainly a lot of things I can still do.
And what are some of the positive influences that you think that time has given you that you're still appreciating and allowing you to catalyst to where you're going today?
Yeah, I think it's like we made that video this year kind of about the accident, which again, I think up until this point, I didn't think that it was that big of a deal. I didn't want it to be a big deal when I was that age, because I felt like it reminded me that I can't do some things. Yeah. But I think in a big way, it's turned into like, no, this is the reason you should do some things, because life is short and something bad could happen. And I don't want to look back on my life and go, oh, I wish I had done this or that. I don't want to wait until I'm 40 or 50 and be like, man, I wish that I had done more in my 20s and 30s and 40s and even up to this point. So I think the biggest takeaway was like, you gotta keep trying no matter how hard it is. And you gotta keep pushing yourself, because life is short and some random freak accident could happen. And I would hate to look back and go like, man, if I had only just pushed myself and actually tried those things. So, yeah.
Are there any things that, you mentioned you wouldn't do a boxing match or anything. Are there still some things that are on lists of like, I someday want to do, but it feels a bit too scary right now? Or maybe it's just not realistic for me right now?
That's a great question. I can't think of anything, honestly. I feel like my job has allowed me to pursue all those crazy things that I've wanted to do as a kid and continue to pursue. So I think when those things come up in my brain where I'm like, oh, I want to do that, I feel like most oftentimes we just go and do it.
That's so interesting, because I feel like there's a lot of things that I physically can't do. Well, some things I can do with the job, the career that I have. There's some things that I can't do because of the time it would take away from my family while I have young kids. And I don't want to, or it's not fair to miss that time. And then there's also some things that are, could be done if I prioritize them, but they still I feel like not mentally ready for them yet.
What's like one of those things?
One of mine is like, I want to do like the silent meditation. That's a big one that I want to do. That's all three. I don't think I could justify that time. I get, away from my family. I don't feel like mentally I'm ready for that. And I don't feel like this is the time to prioritize that. But some
Would that
days,
be it's like a week-long thing, or?
I think it's 7. Yeah, there's different ones. There's like 3-day, 5-day, 7-day, 10-day. I think I would want to go for the full like 7 or 10, which is
okay.
Yeah, but things like that, I think, or yeah.
So I'm kind of selfish, maybe, because I thought of this as well. Like I don't necessarily desire to do the 7-day meditation, but there was a time where I was like, oh, maybe that would be a good video. And then it's like, okay, well, now I can completely justify this, because if it's a good video, then that's income.
Sure.
And
you
if
can
it's
do that.
income,
Yes.
then let's go and shoot it right now. So, and maybe that makes me selfish.
No, I think that's just making the most of the opportunity that you have. And that is maybe where, I've actually had a lot of conversations with, many of our mutual friends about this, about, for me, sustainability and running is my thing, which is I'm really proud of the work that I do. I feel like I have a positive influence on the world. I get lots of opportunities, but at the same time, I really have to weigh what I'm doing, because I cannot be focused on this topic and disappearing off to 7 different locations within a month. Like, it just doesn't sit well with me. It makes me feel hypocritical. And so, and also, with the time away. But for me, my role is that sustainability piece. So that's just the downside of the work that I do, is that, like, I have to pick what is most important, or what I can do while I am in X place. So, but for you, you have other downsides. You have other things that are, that are unique to you that I can maybe do that you can't. So that's just the way it is. But yes, I love that you have nothing to answer as of right now. And when things do come up, you can be like, let's figure out how to do it. So that is great.
There's one thing that I've wanted to do for a really long time and I haven't, and it's not that I can't do it. It's that I'm just too lazy to pull it off, but I want to run across Iceland. And nobody's ever done it before.
Oh,
I don't know. I think that's part of it, is because nobody's ever done it. But you would have to take it through the Highlands, and I have a route and everything figured out. I've wanted to do it for several years, and I think for me, it's like if it can't make a really good video out of it, then it feels like a waste. And sometimes I have to let myself go.
We've got to dig into that. We've got to dig into that. Okay, wait. Why does it feel like a waste if it doesn't make a good video? Why are you not worthy yourself of having an experience?
See, this is something I've had to think about a lot, even with the running stuff. I think it's because I've gotten so accustomed to, if I'm going to do something, and if it's a desire of mine, then I should be able to turn it into a video. And if that's the case, then this is worth doing, because I can make income off of it. But I've realized in the last couple of years, especially with running, that doesn't have to be true. And I've actually done, how many races have I done this year? There's been at least 2 of the races that I've done this year were just for me.
Did you not take your phone?
I did take my phone, but I didn't make videos out of it for YouTube, where it was like, this is going to be income. We've got an idea and a thumbnail and all these things. So it was just
Did you record during it?
Yeah, I did. But just for Instagram, for that for me, that's like a fun outlet. Like, I don't care how it performs. This is just for me. And 2 of those races, one of them was the Speed Project from LA to Vegas. Yes. And then the other one was Canyons. I was signed up for that with a friend, and he had to drop out. But I wanted to run that race because it felt like an intense ultra that I haven't done yet. Yeah. And I wanted to run a UTMB race so I could get stones so that I could do the World Series at some point. Yeah. And so, those 2 opportunities were ones where I was like, okay, I'm not making money off of this. This is purely for me. And there's something really liberating about that too. Just being like, hey, I'm going to do this for me. So maybe I just need to go run across Iceland and call it a day.
You do, but I'm stuck on this. I am going to set you a challenge by the end of the year. You have to do a race where you don't take your phone.
Okay, all right.
You leave it with your wife or whoever you're with. And if you want, I don't know if you know this, but I had Achilles surgery like 6 weeks ago. So I am not going to be running anything for a while. But once I am back running again, if you need me to hold you accountable, and we can do it at one of the, I don't know, cross intersectional events that we're at. Because I really think, actually, I don't even think you should do it with someone else. I think it'd be really interesting to, even if it was like a filmed you at the start, filmed you at the finish, and then like in the middle, see where your mind went. I think that would be fascinating. Like in the same silent meditation way of like, where would your mind go when it wasn't like strategically thinking? Yeah,
I really like this challenge. Actually, I'm writing it down right now so I don't forget. So this is good. This is good.
I think this would be. I think this would be like a really interesting experience, and it has to be at least a half. I think.
No, at least a marathon.
Okay, all right. If you want to take marathon, I love that. That's good. Well, you run a lot of marathons, so you probably can. If you can run a marathon in Crocs, you can run a marathon without your phone.
Yeah.
Or you can put it like somewhere where you can't access it. So if you want it to, Strava concerns or whatever.
No, there doesn't need to come with. We have watches for that.
Okay. All right. I will look forward to seeing this. Is there anything else you want to share with the community that, is something you feel is important for people to keep in mind, or just that you want to pass along?
I think if there was one thing I could share, whatever challenge you're facing, like, don't give up, because the only ones who don't make it are quitters, and nobody wants to be a quitter. So just don't give up.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great advice. Although I when people say that, my brain always goes back to me in 2017 to where quitting was absolutely the right thing for me to do.
Yeah, sometimes it is.
I'm still here, so I came back. It wasn't a total quit. It was just I need a reset button. So thank you. Isaiah, I have loved our conversation today. Thank you so much for joining me, for all that you do, for the inspiration you bring on behalf of your community. We appreciate you. And I look forward to hearing about this solo, phoneless race you end up doing at some point.
Yes, it'd be awesome. Thank you for having me, Tina. This is great.
Before we go any further, I just want to give a quick shout out to the Running for Real team. Without them, I would not be able to do barely anything compared to what I'm able to do today. They are behind the scenes. They are there for me. I am just so appreciative of them. To Jeremy Nessel, our podcast editor, audio consultant, and someone who's been with me since the start. To Sally Pontarelli, our content and operations manager, who is there day to day doing all the things to help me be successful. To Kelsey Wang, our head of design, and Louise Murphy, our associate designer. And finally, to Sandy Gutierrez, our photographer and content strategist. I am appreciative of all of you and wouldn't be able to do what I do without you. Interested to hear your thoughts there of what you think of this new branch of running. Isaiah and I have continued our conversation, talking through the various elements of what this new branch of running means and, what can be done to prevent it from harming anyone with what they are trying to do in their own goal setting, but also ways to kind of encourage all of us to have a bit more fun. I hope you enjoyed that episode today. I would love to hear your thoughts if you want to share it or reach out to me. You can find links to everything we talked about today in the show notes at runningforreal.com/episode 404. There will also be links to Isaiah's Instagram, his impressive YouTube channel, as well as our sponsors Tracksmith, AG1 and Precision. Be sure to go get yourself those special discounts with those brands. Thank you so much for listening, my friends. I'll see you next week.